I want to talk today about math skills in science. Now, many of us know we all know that math skills is important. Many of us know that students struggle with maths and that can affect them. So, even to do any minimal job, you need to pass your maths GCSE. You need to pass your maths GCSE. But the thing is that tends to stop with maths. So we know that, okay, my child struggles with maths or maths is key and so on and so forth, but we don't stop to think about how it can actually sip into their science and it can affect their science. So what I'm going to do today is I am going to talk about why math skills is important for GCSE science students. Then we're going to look at the main mistakes that GCSE science students make when it comes to their math skills. And then we're also going to look at basically how to fix those mistakes. So yeah, I'm literally just going to jump right in. So even if one of the problems is that even where students tend to do well in maths, they might still not have the skills to apply it for science. They still need to be able to apply it for science. And if they don't know how to do that, it can still affect their science grades, right? So let's start first with why maths is important in science. So in GCSE science, maths is worth about 20%. So that's about a fifth of their grade. So that's quite a weight. That's quite a worthy amount. Now, if you add their practical investigation skills to this, you're looking at 40% because there's a lot of maths within the practical investigation type questions, right? And that's where you're looking at that 2 to 3 grades difference. So this is ultimately the difference between, am I going to get a 4, a good pass, an okay pass, a standard pass, or am I going to get a grade 6, which is more than a strong pass? It's like a grade B. Yeah, it's grade 6 is like a grade B, or the difference between, a 6 and an 8, for instance. So especially for students who want to go into sort of top universities, then actually really honing in on their math skills and brushing up on their math skills is going to make a world of difference to them. Yeah. Okay, so what are the mistakes then that students make with regards to maths? Well, the first and most important one is they don't know the importance of maths and science. We go back to, they might, like in maths, know they have to do it, but when it comes to science, they just think science, right? They think the core science, the fundamental science, atoms, electricity, and so on and so forth. And then they attempt 1 or 2 mark science questions, and sometimes even those extended 6 mark science questions. But then when they see a maths question thrown in, they get stuck, right? And this is actually what prompted me to do this, because we'd done a topic with some of my students, and we were going through the topic and doing some questions really nicely. And then there was one question on converting units, and they got stuck, right? And so it's just really important that they know that the maths and science is just as important as the science. It's a key skill, it's a fundamental skill, and they need to know it. And what the problem is that even though maths is now really key, especially in the current curriculum, many schools are still not, I wouldn't say not focusing on it, but they're not emphasizing on the importance, right? They just focus on the science. So students don't think of that maths go along with science when they are in their science subjects. They're not going to put in the effort to do it, yeah? And they're also not aware that how well they do in the maths questions will actually significantly affect their science grades. Yeah, so that's the biggest mistake. It's just that they're not aware. It's not been emphasized at school. they open up the science books and the maths is like a little portion. They might not see it, they just see science. So they focus on science. They focus on science instead. Yeah. This leads us to the second mistake, which is that if they're not aware of the importance of maths in science, what are they going to do? Well, they're not going to improve their math skills. They're not going to focus on their math skills. And so they are going to skip those maths questions when it comes along. Just like the students that I was working with recently, they saw the maths questions and they kind of thought, oh, okay, they kind of got a bit stuck. Yeah. Now, obviously, this is going to be a problem for them because it means that they are going to lose marks, right? Because while those maths questions might be 1 mark here, 2 mark here, 3 mark here, even 4 marks here, they add up, right? And they add up to 20% of their marks, right? So things like converting unit standard forms, you know, lots of maths and physics and chemistry, there's an entire mathematical unit. You know, imagine if one exam paper, the examiners just decided to focus, which they can do, on maths unit or the chemistry unit, right? They decide to put like a massive question on that. If you're not confident with that, it is going to affect your grades, right? And you're not going to reach that grade that you want to achieve. You're not going to reach that grade that you want. So this is essentially like what happens is like a reflex action. They don't know what to do and they just go next, and they ignore the questions, right? This now leads us to mistake number 3, which is obviously they lose essential marks, right? So if they are ignoring that 1 mark question, that 2 mark question, and so on and so forth in maths, because they're not comfortable with it, and this is particularly key for the students who generally struggle with maths anyway, they are losing essential marks. They are losing 20%, right? Marks. They are, how do I put it? They are reducing their chance of getting that 1 extra grade, right? So if somebody's on a grade 5 and they want to get a grade 6, right? So that they can go to a good university, they are minimizing that chance because they skipping those maths question. And it's it's almost a reflex of, well, if I skip the maths question, a science question is going to come and I'm going to focus on the science and I'll do okay. Well, you might or you might not do okay in the science question. But even if you do okay in the science question, you don't do well in the maths part, then that is your 20% lost, right? I hope I'm actually making sense there. So yeah, they lose essential marks. So that's the third mistake, right? So you can literally see what's happening here is this domino effect of, well, schools don't emphasize the importance of maths and science, right? So they don't realize they see some maths questions in science, but they don't realize how important it is. They don't realize how important it is, so they don't spend their time, right, studying maths, right, like they do for science. They don't spend the time studying maths, so their confidence in maths is low. And therefore, when they see exam questions, practice questions around maths skills in science, they ignore it. They skip it and they lose marks. So you can see that domino effect going from one thing to another. So what is the way around this then? What can we do, you know, to help students become more confident with maths, more comfortable with maths, to in turn improve their science grades, right? The first thing I would advise students is to spend time learning maths for science. So when students are revising for science, they open up their books, they make notes, they go onto YouTube and watch a video all about something to do with science, you know, energy, earth, movement, you name it, photosynthesis, whatever, something to do with science. What they don't do is they don't spend a fraction of that time learning maths, right? So since maths is 20%, I would recommend they spend that 1/5 of their time, 1/5 of their time that they study for science, that they actually do some maths as well, but obviously maths specific for science, right? So really focusing on math skills as well. Yeah. So what I do with my students is we have a maths introduction unit. And what that means is before we jump straight into the science, because even a science like biology that's only worth about 10% of the maths marks, the minute you jump in, right, into cells, there's going to be things like converting units and various things on maths, right? So we do a maths introduction unit. So like one of the first things we do so that they start to get comfortable with math before we jump in onto the science. And that consists of about 4 lessons with, I can't remember, but maybe up to like 8 different maths topics in them. So actually, I'm just going to quickly share something else with you. Hopefully, if it's opened. Yeah. So if you have a look here, this is the maths, GCSE Science maths, maths in science checklist. And you can see there's quite a lot they need to know: arithmetic, percentages, handling data. And we take them as we go along, right? So all of this is quite a lot, algebra and lots of different things. And I think there's even more that I haven't added onto this. So all of this, what we do is we do it as an introduction unit. So they actually spend time learning maths in the same way they would learn science so that they get comfortable with it. Yeah. So this is like a screenshot that I took of one of the lessons. I think this was the last lesson on algebra and equations. And, when we do that, we also talk about, okay, this is what you need to know. Yeah, so these are like the 4 things that they need to focus on. And then the key one, I've highlighted that in blue. Yeah, so that's the first thing that we do. We actually do that introduction unit to get them to become comfortable in their maths. Okay, so my advice to students then would just be to make sure that they actually focus on the maths, like I said earlier, and get comfortable with it. Okay, the second thing that I would recommend to students is to find a way to make maths simple for them. So identify certain methods that work for them. So again, in our case, what we do with the students I work with, I'll just give you an example here, right? So one thing that students struggle with a lot is converting units, right? Going from kilograms, millimeters to centimeter, and so on and so forth. And what I do is I talk to them about, okay, these are different ways that you can do it, but find a way that works for you. And this is one of the ways that we've come up with, which is a table that has the main prefix, right? So the main sort of units that they need to focus on, centimeters, millimeters, and so on and so forth. And it has the multiplication factor. So with the table, it's very easy because I basically show them, okay, this is what you need to do. So you need to convert from centimeters to meter, or you need to convert from megahertz to hertz, right? And together we also come up with a way to actually remember the table. So if they don't remember the normal converting factors that they can use to convert in the normal way, like 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams, then they can actually remember this table, draw a quick example of this table, not necessarily a symbol in the middle, but draw a quick table as they do in the test on the side, and they can really use that easily to convert from one thing to another. It's basically just arrows going. So for instance, centimeter to meters, you just have you start with your centimeter, you draw your arrows to where your meters will be, and then you decide whether, okay, based on where I'm going, am I going to divide and am I going to multiply? And what is that factor that we're going to use? Yeah. So I actually thoroughly explained that to the students. So this is one way of making it really, really simple so that when maths is not like it's not a hard thing for them. The third thing that we do is sorry. The third thing that we do is we actually focus, and that's another thing actually I was going to say is that when they start to do things like this, they realize that, oh, it's not just I'm bad at science, right? Because when they're skipping these questions within the context of science, it's just that I needed to develop this skill. So it really, really helps to boost their confidence. Okay. The third thing we do is we focus on we focus on units that have a large math skill. So some of the physics units have, of course, large math skills, but also the chemistry unit, the chemistry has a massive unit on math. So it has a massive quantitative chemistry unit, calculation units. And this can go whoop over students' head, which is actually why many schools do this calculation like right later on in year 11, right? So it can go completely over their head. And so we focus on that. We take a time and say, right, let's focus on this specific unit. We go through examples. So you can see here, these are on the left-hand side where the blue's been covered. This would be the examples, the step-by-step examples that I give the student. Once we've worked through a couple of examples together, 2 to 3 examples together, then I say, okay, you try it. And I cover it out with that blue so that they can try it. But they still have the hints because you can see the numbers. So the first one is, okay, write out your balanced equation and draw your table. Second one is work out the molecular mass. Third one is calculate the moles using the equation and so on and so forth. So we still give them sort of hints that they can do. And then once we see they're confident, we now just take out a question or several questions from exam papers and we get them to practice it, right? So they're really, really confident. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to, I was actually inspired to do this by, well, a recent class that I had, and, we were doing we were doing some science and then they went on to the maths and then I realized they got a bit stuck. So yeah, I hope that's helped. I hope that you've seen, the major mistakes that student makes when it comes to maths. I hope you've seen the importance of maths and science, that it's worth on its own at least one grade level, the difference between going into your preferred university and not going to your preferred university. So if anyone's actually here watching this now, I do have that checklist that I have. I am very, very happy to share that checklist with you. Just type checklist down below and I'll share that with you so that your child can actually check where they are in terms of their math skills in science. Okay, guys, I hope you found that useful. Enjoy the rest of your day and I shall see you next time. Bye for now.